Hi everybody, my name is Caitlin Golden and I did my research project on Sanfilippo syndrome. You may be wondering what Sanfilippo syndrome is. Clinically, it is mucopolysaccharide 3 or MSP3. It's also known as childhood dementia or childhood Alzheimer's. It's a disease that's caused by a lack of one of the four enzymes that breaks down heparan sulfate. Heparan sulfate is a form of cellular waste that can cause cell death if it's not properly disposed of or metabolized. So there are four different subsets of Sanfilippo syndrome. Each subset is defined by a deficiency of a specific enzyme needed to break down heparan sulfate, but the deficiency of each enzyme is directly related to an improperly functioning gene. Type A is caused by the improper function of the SGSH gene. Type B is caused by the improper function of the NAGLU gene. Type C is caused by the improper function of HGSNAT gene. And type D is caused by an improperly functioning GNS gene. You may be wondering what causes Sanfilippo's. Sanfilippo syndrome cannot be pinpointed to a specific cause, but it is a genetic disorder, and this condition is inherited by the child from their parents. However, this disease is an autosomal recessive inherited disease, which means that both parents must be recessive carriers of the disease, which means there's only a 25% chance that the carriers of these genetic malformations will have a child with Sanfilippo syndrome. Now that you know what the causes are or lack thereof of causes, let's talk about treatment. While there is no cure for Sanfilippo syndrome, there are clinical trials ongoing to research the efficacy of using things like enzyme replacement therapy, substrate reduction therapy, pharmacological chaperones, stem cell therapy, and gene therapy to reduce the symptoms that could possibly cure Sanfilippo syndrome. However, there's not been any sufficient evidence to suggest that any of these avenues work. Currently, aside from the clinical trials, treatment for Sanfilippo's is focused on maintaining the quality of life for children with Sanfilippo syndrome. Now, what are the symptoms of Sanfilippo syndrome? There are behavioral issues, bowel issues, sleep difficulties. Behavioral problems like obstinance, not following directions, or even aggression may be seen in children with Sanfilippo syndrome. And bowel issues such as diarrhea is also commonly associated with this disease. Children with Sanfilippo also tend to have sleep problems such as insomnia, which is the inability to get proper and adequate sleep. And additionally, children with Sanfilippo syndrome may also have ambulatory issues due to joint stiffening, which means that they're not able to move around as well as somebody without those issues. Another common symptom of Sanfilippo syndrome that I would like to include is coarse facial features. Now, what are coarse facial features? This may include a pronounced brow ridge, thick eyebrows that often meet in the middle like a unibrow, a broad nasal bridge, and full lips. These are pictures of children with Sanfilippo's, and it shows the progression of the facial coarseness over time. And below is pictures of their unaffected siblings. Many children with Sanfilippo syndrome may be diagnosed with autism as well as Sanfilippo syndrome. While the full diagnosis is actually Sanfilippo syndrome, autism is often diagnosed because symptoms of Sanfilippo can often mimic symptoms of autism. Children with Sanfilippo also tend to have recurrent ear, nose, and throat disorders such as earaches, ear infections, and throat infections or sore throats. Children with Sanfilippo syndrome also tend to be very hyper, which can lead to a diagnosis of hyperactivity. As I mentioned before, children with Sanfilippo syndrome often have sleep problems, which can lead to a diagnosis of a sleep disorder, such as insomnia. One of the major comorbidities of Sanfilippo syndrome is seizures or seizure disorders. Because the buildup of heparan sulfate, because of the buildup of heparan sulfate, cells begin to die, and when that cell death occurs in the brain, it can often lead to those seizures. So unfortunately, the life expectancy for children with Sanfilippo syndrome is very low. Children with Sanfilippo syndrome type A, which is the most common and most rapidly progressing subtype, is early teens. This could be 13, 14. Type B, which is a little less common, a little slower progressing, but it's almost as common as type A, is about 15 years. Type C is less common and slower progressing, and the life expectancy for type C is about 19 years. But type D is the rarest form of Sanfilippo syndrome, and because it is so rare, there's not been enough documented cases to determine an accurate life expectancy, but researchers believe that type D has the longest life expectancy in comparison to the other types of Sanfilippo syndrome because it is the slowest progressing. You may be wondering how education of a child with Sanfilippo syndrome what it may look like. Well, the education of a child with Sanfilippo syndrome is largely dictated by the parents of this child. While some children with Sanfilippo syndrome can do well in public school with the proper intervention and assistance, other children may not be able to participate in a regular classroom or even in a regular school. Some parents believe that the inclusion of their child within a public school setting will increase their quality of life, while other parents opt for their child to be either homeschooled or sent to a specialized school that's equipped to handle children with severe medical conditions like Sanfilippo. However, all school options will often include some form of therapy and interventions within the child's education. These interventions include art and music therapy, sensory rooms, adaptive PE, and alternative breaks during the school day. This could mean taking a walk or shortening lesson plans. So I would like for you to meet Logan. Logan's the whole reason I chose to research Sanfilippo syndrome. About 2 years ago, I came across his family's page on TikTok, and this page was all about Logan and his disease. His family used this platform to educate people about Sanfilippo syndrome because they wanted to educate and bring awareness to this disease. With awareness comes research. Logan is 14 years old now, and he has Sanfilippo syndrome type A, which means that his life expectancy is only about 15 years old. But you wouldn't be able to tell through the videos that his mom posts for us to enjoy. He is fun-loving, full of life, kind, but ultimately he has a devastating illness that will lead to an early death. It's heartbreaking. So I wanted to do this project not only to learn more for myself, but also to spread awareness about this devastating disease that's taken so many from us and will continue to take more until we can research ways to cure or even treat Sanfilippo's. So for more information, you can go to the National MSP Society's website, Cure Sanfilippo Foundation website, and you could also go on TikTok if you want a more personalized and down to earth um, account of Sanfilippo syndrome, I suggest you check out the accounts Love Logan and Hayden's Hope on TikTok. They do fantastic jobs of educating others about the disease and showing the daily life of living with children with Sanfilippo. I encourage you all to look into this disease and learn more, and the more you know, the more you may be able to help. Thank you for your time.